The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Q&A tonight with David Book. Looks like kind of a light crowd so far, but I expect some folks to join us throughout the evening. We've got 90 minutes now to ask David lots and lots of questions, and there's lots of things to ask questions about here lately. So with that, I'll let you know I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphones here in about 30 seconds. When I unmute your microphone, please mute it on your end. And if you have a question, just raise your hand, use the raise your hand feature, or you can send me your question and I will funnel it on to David so that we can get those questions answered for you. So I am unmuting right now. And so if we get a little feedback, I may have to mute you back out, but it looks like right now we're good. And as soon as I said that, we've got a little audio feedback there in the back. So please mute your microphones. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll welcome David Book. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi, Warren. I'm doing good. I'm ending a couple of day marathon. You know, we got the latest self-hosted package released literally like an hour ago, and boy, that was giving me a hard time on a few of the install processes. But I'm happy to get that out, and that's a hurdle that's been kind of slowing down some other important things that need to be done around here. But so I'm doing good. I always look forward to these Q&As. Are just kind of a relaxing time to talk about code and mobile and nerdy stuff like that. So hopefully, I see a pretty small group. Hopefully we'll get some questions coming.
Well, I'll start you out with one right now, David, because this is one that kind of applies to me.
Okay.
About 9 months ago or so, I migrated from using the Buzztouch.com control panel to a self-hosted control panel, which was all cool. I had high hopes of developing lots of stuff and doing that. But in reality, 9 months later, I don't really need to be self-hosted anymore. Is there a migratory path to go backwards, so to speak, to go from self-hosted back to just using the Buzztouch.com control panel, or is it a matter of having to just delete my app and rebuild it in the control panel?
Yeah, the answer is no, there's not. In fact, there's not a path either direction, which on one hand, meaning from Buzztouch.com to self-hosted, but also from self-hosted back to Buzztouch.com. And on one hand, that seems like a pretty elementary idea, but on the other hand, it's quite challenging and quite complicated on our end to get that straightened down. And we've literally been tossing around some ways to do it for a couple of years now. And of course, things change so quickly and all that kind of stuff. But so that's the bad news. But the good news is, and unless you have an extraordinarily complicated app, it's probably not more than an hour or two's worth of work. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm looking at my control panel right now. Let me open up a self-hosted control panel just for fun. I've got a demo here that I've always been using. In fact, this is the one I've been using, you know, on a lot of these different webinars. So let me open up this self-hosted control panel. So this is an app here in self-hosted, and then this is an app on Buzztouch.com hosted. So as you know, what it really boils down to is your configuration data. So the first thing you'll want to do is just make sure you have your head around the idea of how this works, so that when you go to compile an update to submit to the App Store, you kind of understand what's going on. But really all you're talking about doing is making sure that the URLs anywhere in this configuration data, depending on what you're using, are pointing to the application in your control panel on Buzztouch hosted, and not in your control panel on it's not your self-hosted panel, but the Buzztouch.com panel. So what that'll mean is you'll probably want to recreate that application in the control panel, replicate those screens, depending on how many screens you have. And then what you'll end up doing, what you don't want to do is recompile literally a new app for Apple. Ideally, you'll just submit an update. So what you'll be doing is using the same project that you've already got and replacing this configuration data so that it, quote unquote, points to the Buzztouch hosted site and not your self-hosted panel. And that way your customers never really know what happened and you're not completely replacing the app. So that is, that's kind of the short answer for it. And we can have a pretty lengthy discussion about why that's not an automated process. Let's feel some of these other questions first, and then we'll just kind of leave that one at that. But it is, to summarize what I just said, you're going to want to recreate your app in the Buzztouch.com hosted site and make sure that your configuration data in the app you compile is replaced with that new data so that when you submit an update, it's no longer pointing at your old hosted site.
So, but I wouldn't have to, would I have to repackage it and resubmit it to Apple as an update to an app?
It would be an update.
Okay, so that I would have to compile something and go through the approval process with Apple again.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I forwarded you a question from Kristen. Kristen's online with us.
I see Kristen here. In fact, it's interesting that he's asking that. Kristen's saying, hey, any feedback on the questions people are asking about the push notifications not going through of late? I'm also experiencing this on Buzztouch.com. So, yes and no. In fact, let's go to the forum. I haven't seen the forum in a couple of days in my effort to try to get rid of, or to try to get this newest release out. But let's go to the forum now. And I just replied to Jake. Jake on the forum was asking something about the devices not registering. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. Jake was asking about the devices not re-registering right here. And so, Kristen, I don't have a short answer because I don't really know what's going on, but let's revisit how it's supposed to be working, and we'll kind of go from there. So in your control panel, in the push notifications screen, on the push notifications screen, you have the show devices link. And this has changed in the last few days. And the drop down here when you go to send notifications is important because it's either going to send them to devices that have registered with your panel in design mode or registered in your panel in live mode. And so if you're looking at your list of devices, it's important that you first kind of get your head around the devices that are supposed to be getting the messages. So if you're seeing them in the list with live or design, then that'll tell you the ones that are supposed to be receiving the messages. I think most of us understand that. And then when you send them, if you're sending them to live devices, then you'll be sending them using your Apple push certificate. I'm assuming this is Apple. Your Apple push certificate for live, or what we call production, and what Apple calls production. And if you're sending them in design mode, then you're going to be sending them with the development certificate. So that's kind of the setup for how it's supposed to work. And so if it's not working, one of the really disappointing things about the push notification process is Apple, because they don't guarantee the delivery of them, there's really almost no way to know if the thing actually got sent. So what we can check, and I know that sounds crazy, and they are pretty reliable, but let me show you what we can check. In fact, when you look at your the new self-hosted server, when you get that software installed on your box, I know that's something you've been waiting for. You can review this again on that in that source code, in that package. But let's go to app push notifications, which is this file right here, and it's a pretty complicated PHP file. But this file here, the push notifications.php screen, this one here, all it does is it collects the information about the devices that you want to send the messages to. So for example, if I put this message here, send to design devices, then what's going to happen, oh, I don't have any design devices registered. I'll do live, but I got to put a certificate on here. Well, I'm in the wrong test app, but I think you get the idea. This screen is used to build our queue, and then the file that actually does the sending is called push notifications Ajax. And this file is pretty long and pretty complicated. And it's the file that actually does the sending. And you'll notice, if you really want to spend the time to look through here, that it doesn't do a whole lot other than process some feedback from Apple and connect to Apple's push notification system, APNS, and process these messages either through their sandbox or through their regular live gateway. And so once we send these messages off, we can capture an error if we can't connect, and that would be related to like your certificate credentials. But other than that, if we can connect to the sandbox or to the live push server and send off the message, if it doesn't arrive, it's going to be related to the registration token. And I guess one way to do that would be to try to open up Xcode, and it'll show you the registration token in the console when the app launches. I'm not sure how else to explain that. I'm guessing you're not alone in this, though. Are you? Can you hear me, Kristen? Maybe you should just jump in the conversation and we can talk about it together, because you're not by yourself. I know that.
Yeah, a couple of days ago, the push notifications was working fine. As you headed to the development devices, etc. And then, I'm not sure what happened after you changed to the design and live mode. I've tested it on the same device that I had it working on design mode, and my devices in the iOS devices, but nothing's coming through anymore. It says sent and everything like that, but
I'm interrupting you, I'm sorry, but so I'm seeing here Aruba Man is having no trouble with it, which is fine. I think what's going on is there's probably a conflict between what I think is supposed to be happening in your code, well, obviously, and what is happening in your code. And so the difference is, let me show you something here in this project. In the delegate class, when we registered, did register for notifications, you'll see here that the current mode right here is getting appended to the end of the URL. Current mode being the mode in the config data, which we know as current mode design. So the current mode's getting appended to the URL so that in your control panel you can see which devices have registered in live and which devices have registered in design. So I think that's easy enough for everyone to understand. But what is one problem I think for sure is, depending on when you downloaded this project, this was only added a few days ago, and I put a little forum post on there because what we learned in the first 10 days of this push process is it was super confusing to try to figure out if you're pushing to live or pushing to design. So I'm guessing your project doesn't have this little simple change in it, which in itself shouldn't be a problem because the back end is going to default and show you in your panel, live here. So I guess let's back up a little bit. Are you trying to push them to live or design?
To design, and I resubmitted the code to my testing device yesterday, so it should be the latest, and it's coming up in the devices as a design iPhone with the token, etc.
So it is showing up in the list of devices here.
That's right. Yeah.
The device
showing up as a design, everything. My certificate hasn't changed.
I wonder if, and this is probably a dumb question, and of course without actually seeing the project it's super difficult to know, but what ends up happening is if the device token comes from Apple, right? So Apple sends the token, and it'll send that token in the did register for remote notifications method, and then we log that to the console. We take that token if we have one, and we send it off to the control panel and register in the control panel. So it sounds to me like that's working. If you can see your device, then that's certainly working. So the next question would be, really the only other thing you're going to be able to figure out, and there shouldn't be anything wrong with your PEM certificate, the same certificate you were using before, and the device ID hasn't changed, which you put in your identifier right here. That certainly hasn't changed, and that's what your provisioning profiles associated with. I guess I don't know what to think other than, and I can certainly dig through our back end, it might be that there's something wrong that we don't realize. It could be that our back end's just not sending them when we think it is.
Have you tested it on your side lately?
I haven't tested it today. I certainly paid a lot of attention to it yesterday because I'm constantly looking at it. And I get alerted. I know that the server itself is running. I'm looking at it right now. But there's some very, very like wildly large logs and whatnot that I have to look at to actually get details out of it. And then like the weird thing is, let me copy that link again. The weird thing is if you look at this forum, some people are having no trouble with it. So clearly, you know, I say clearly, I mean presumably the server's running or it wouldn't be sending it for anybody. And we have a pretty complicated setup on the back end that's handling all this notifications. Like Arubaman yesterday at 9:30 last night said it was fine. I haven't looked at it today. This person's asking, Cosmo Web's asking if it's working on a new project. Yeah, not a whole lot of other comments on there. So I'm certainly happy to dig into that tonight. It's something that's obviously really, really important to us. I would be surprised if there's something wrong because we have so many systems set up to yell at David when it's not working. But you know, I'll make you that, you know, the commitment to you. I mean, it's obviously important. I'll get into it and see what's happening. I'll bet that there's something that we don't quite understand about how the registration process is working, and you and I are missing something obvious, but I'll figure it out. Can you send me in an email? I know you have my email, Kristen. Can you send me the name of the project that I'll look at in your control panel?
Are you sure?
Yeah, send me the name of that project. And is it daytime for you right now?
Yeah, it's 10:20 a.m.
Yeah, it's like getting ready to be middle of the night for me, but I'll certainly look into it. And then Calypso Kid, you're apparently experiencing the same thing. You know, shoot me an email with the name of. If you look lower, I think Arubaman said that he did not recompile with the new push. Yeah, it could be. Could be Arubaman might have been using the old project, and maybe there's something wrong with this project that I'm not aware of. So yeah, so if Calypso, if you could also send me the name of your project, I'm happy to look into those, and we'll just see what I find. I mean, there's certainly going to be an answer.
He says okay, David.
Cool. The push and the self-hosted panel have been getting all my attention for the last couple of weeks, and here as soon as I think I'm out of the woods, maybe we're not. Which is just part of the way it goes.
Well, let me ask you sort of a non-technical question, David.
Yeah.
Do you regret trying to put push in your tool, or are you okay with it?
Oh no, I don't regret it at all. I think it's a necessary component for us to continue to help our customers and our members. I think the biggest challenge for me is, you know, I want things to work amazingly well and efficiently, and I don't want them to be really, really basic. And I'm a little bit anxious about getting the push system more sophisticated so you can do more than these basic messages. But I also recognize that doing this at scale is not easy, and the first step is certainly getting it running, getting our back end humming along, and ensuring that it works exactly like we expect and exactly like our users expect. And I did expect some difficulty in that, but I thought I was through those in that first week or so, and apparently we're not. And so no, it's certainly not a regret, and it is something that is important for all of our customers and us included. But I look forward to the day when it's a little bit more sophisticated and a little bit easier, and just kind of all those things that I want this stuff to be. But that's a good question. There's a lot of things. In fact, this is a really good talking point. Warren, you've been in a lot of these discussions lately. One thing that people don't realize about what we do is one of the biggest challenges that we have, and this is a personal challenge, is I am so motivated to continue to add features and add magic and add all these functions to our system that I very, very oftentimes overlook the fact that each thing that we add also increases the complexity of it, and therefore, makes it harder to take advantage of. And there's a certain argument to be made that says, this thing is amazing already. Stop adding things and get to the point where you can document it and teach about it and make some videos and give our customer base and our audience really what they deserve, which is a much more sophisticated way to learn how it works and to understand it. None of that has anything to do with new features. And so it was very important to me to get push in this new version of Live and Design and push in this new version of the self-hosted house so that we can do exactly that. Stop worrying about constantly adding new for a while and just bring the system up to speed with proper basically what it boils down to is the documentation and all that kind of stuff. The plugin market needs a little bit more attention. The webinars and the events, it's not that we don't do them a lot now, but I'd really like to start focusing on newer topics that I've been thinking about, that you and I have talked about, and stuff like that. And so it's not a regret. It's just, it's cool. And David Barber's saying it's great, it'll work out. And I appreciate the support. You guys can't imagine how nice it is to hear, over and over again, don't worry about it, we understand. Like last night at midnight or 1 a.m., I was really hoping to have this panel done, and I was having all kinds of trouble with the installation script, and I jumped on the forum at whatever time and finally just said, it's just not going to happen. And overwhelmingly, getting emails and messages like, don't worry about it. I'm the one who puts pressure on myself, but it's all good.
Well, I kind of, I guess there's a question in here, sort of, but I kind of liken it to, how you have Photoshop and then you have Photoshop Elements, which is like the core basic stuff you use. Are we evolving to a product set where there's going to be like a Buzztouch Elements and then a full-blown Buzztouch
Pro or something like that?
Something like that.
I don't think that we're going to ever move in the direction where we have two obviously different products, but I do hope to move in the direction, and Ian and I have really been spending a lot of time on this. The process that you go through when you register on our site and begin to experiment with what we have is really, really complicated. And for some people, not enjoyable, right? They don't quite understand it. In fact, Wynn Alexander, welcome aboard, Wynn. I don't think we've met before. He's in our meeting right now. He's saying, I'm impressed, and I'm new to the framework. Do we have any plans to accommodate Windows and the new BlackBerry framework? No concrete plans, Wynn. I did a bunch of BlackBerry development quite a long time ago and really got turned off by kind of the lack of modernity. It wasn't very modern, but I have definitely looked into the BlackBerry platform already. And we kind of follow our audience, and we have very few people who've even brought up Windows Phone 7. I've heard Windows Phone 7 or Windows maybe 5 times in the last year out of thousands and thousands of requests, and so it's challenging for us. But so short term, no, but long term, maybe. We're just going to go where our audience kind of pushes us. But so hopefully that'll answer your question there. But back to what I was saying, the fact is, it's hard to experience what we have in a simpler way from the beginning. And let's go back to the Photoshop problem that you brought, or the comparison that you brought up, because that's a good one. When you open up Photoshop, you don't have to, or a Word document in Word or something, you open up Microsoft Office, you don't have to start from that blank canvas, right? It's very, very normal to say, what do you want to make, a calendar or a or a schedule or a spreadsheet or something. They walk you through a process where you're in essence starting with templates. So I'm not a big fan of the template process because I don't want to help our audience create a bunch of apps that are all in essence the same. But I'm definitely a big fan of helping you experience what we do in a simpler way. And I'll give you one example of that. Let's say that the first thing you should do is download a very, very basic project and just get you through the compiling process. Without worrying about the control panel and all of the things that you can do, let's just help you kind of experience what we do. Take this project, see if you can compile it. If you can't, here are a lot of the resources to try to help you get through that hump, because setting up Eclipse and Xcode is challenging for a lot of new people, and we don't want to hide from the fact that you have to get through that. We definitely want to help people that are interested in learning how Xcode and Eclipse work. but it's not really genuine of us to give them this really complicated project and learn about plugins and learn about all the different things if we know they haven't even compiled anything yet. And so I think I can imagine a time where we don't have a pro in BASIC, but we definitely have a welcome aboard process that helps you become more familiar with the system before you go clicking around and building apps and making screens that you don't even understand what they do. So that's kind of along the lines of another question from Calypso here. Any progress on the new xcode parse warnings? Yeah, some progress, but not a lot. We're at least a few days away from that. What he's referring to there, and we're about, I guess, about 9 days since iOS 6.1 came out. When the new versions of xcode and iOS are released, we always have a week or so of fixing deprecated warnings and all that kind of stuff because everything evolves. And so for that short time frame, when people are downloading the newest version of Apple's compiler, the development environment, xcode, we have to just kind of battle through and update our project. And so one of the problems with Apple is, on one hand, it would be really nice for us to just tell our audience, look, you have to use the latest version of xcode or you're not going to have any luck. But of course, not everybody can use the latest version of xcode because not all machines will run it, so on and so forth. So it's a little bit of a pickle in that if we only support the latest version, then we're writing off customers who are on older versions of, you know, Mountain Lion and Max and all that kind of stuff. But if we do try to support the new version, then as soon as it comes out, we've got this little, you know, week or so of grief. So we've never had a case where it's taken us more than a week to get supported with the latest release until now. And what happened now is, you know, Warren said, do I regret push out and the new self-hosted out? And it's like, no, I don't regret it, but I wish Apple was paying attention, because if they were, they wouldn't have pushed out the latest version of iOS right on top of me. So I had all this stuff at the same time. But that's definitely, you know, the highest priority now that this stuff's off. Well, it's about bumping behind the push.
I hate to say it, David, but there's probably not anybody at One Infinite Loop that's going, I wonder what David's doing down there in Monterey.
Oh, you can't imagine. In fact, this is a really, really fun discussion. I wish there was somebody from Apple in our meeting here, but I've actually been to the campus quite a few times. It's not that far from my house, and about 4 years ago, about 3.5 years ago, was the last time I was up there on any kind of official capacity. You know, they were snooping around and wanted to know what I was doing. And when did the App Store come out? Late 2008, 2009, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
I was already testing some creative, you know, dynamic application building and, you know, database-driven apps and all this kind of stuff that a lot of concepts that we see now. And they weren't really happy with me. And so it's not that they were disappointed, but they were trying to learn, you know, how their business was going to go forward. We're talking about, you know, almost pre-App Store, right at the beginning. And when you have creative people like me writing software to help make mobile development accessible to a larger group of people, they weren't necessarily real happy about that. And it's not that they were disappointed, but, you know, things can be perceived as, you know, in a way that you don't intend them to be perceived. I'll give you a perfect example. It would have been relatively easy or trivial for us back then and today to completely bomb them with, you know, elementary applications that need their approval. I'll give you an example. We could compile these applications in the cloud for our customers, thousands and thousands of them, and just submit them all day long. Hundreds and thousands of applications that we could, you know, tens of thousands of applications we could just submit to Apple for approval. Well, if you think in that regard, you know, that's kind of disingenuous for, you know, for what Apple's trying to do. And we believe strongly that we're trying to help Apple by bringing people up to speed in terms of how their platform works. We're not trying to bomb them with garbage. But if you're Apple and you have now dozens and dozens of services online that all make a claim to help people get going in app development, I can see how that would be a little bit of a challenge for them. So totally, they're not like calling me saying, hey, we're going to release 6.1. I wish they would. And maybe someday when we have hundreds of thousands of people, you know, using our platform, they will. But more than anything, I just want their respect. And I'm not so sure we have it yet. And it's not that we're disrespecting them, but a certain part of the industry is telling Apple in no uncertain terms, hey, we think there's a better way to do this. And that's, you know, if you're Apple, they probably don't like that. I don't want to get on my Apple rant very long. In fact, if anybody wants to continue that discussion, I'm happy to do it. But it's just fun. It's just fun. I hear typing.
I hear typing too. I'm not sure who's typing.
Maybe somebody's writing some code. I don't see any more questions in our box.
No, I don't either. But let me go ahead and just throw a conversation starter out there. Yesterday, on our discussion about plugins and plugin training, towards the end of that, we talked about maybe some additional training to help people get up to speed on Android development.
Totally.
Maybe it does align with plugin development, maybe just in general Android training. It sounds like there's a need for that. And I know Susan's on here, and she may want to unmute and step into this conversation as well. What between Susan and you, what are you thinking about doing? What's our next direction to try to get people more familiar with Android and up to speed?
I'll go first, Susan, and then I'll shut up for a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
So that's a great question, and you're absolutely right on track. And so there's a couple of different challenges with Android. The biggest challenge with Android from our perspective is if you go to the plugin market, there aren't many choices for Android, and that's disappointing for us. And so if we go to look at these plugins, you'll see the overwhelming number of them. Like, for example, the last 6 have been iOS only. And so that is really the result of a couple of things. And the biggest thing is just the enthusiasm from our audience for iOS. And so that's not a bad thing. But there's this perception amongst the audience that iOS is more fun and easier and on and on and on, which is a little bit true. So that's part of the problem. And then the other problem is, for most newcomers to mobile development, it's my opinion that there's this perception that there's this giant difference between Android and iOS. And of course there are big differences, but there are also far more similarities than there are differences. The biggest difference is just the environment that you work in, Eclipse, and of course syntactically the syntax for Java is completely different. But the principles are the same. Screens unloading, different events with different names. In iOS you have, view did load, and Android you have on create. So there seems to be this disconnect between the similarities, and people are quick to point out the differences versus the similarities. But what I like to do somehow, and I haven't yet figured out the best way to do this, is come up with some kind of I don't want to say a teaching method, but some kind of a structured course that goes from a beginning to an end so that we can be more thorough in each topic and start earlier on in the process, kind of from the beginning, for those that are interested. The problem with that, of course, is, if you start a course, let's say every Monday, and you do it for 2 weeks, what happens to the people who are coming in, halfway through? We don't have the resources to run these webinars. We can't start a new series every day kind of thing. So I'm not really sure the best way to do it. And then the last challenge that we have, and this is, I think, going to ruffle a little bit of a few feathers, and that's not the intention, but lots of people are just like, yeah, teach me how to do Android. And I'm thinking to myself, there's a few basic prerequisites that you need to have before, we can't spend a year teaching people how to do this. And so it's almost as if they're not really, some of these people in our audience are almost not willing to take the initiative on their own, and they want to just sit and listen for an hour and it's unrealistic to think that you can learn how to do Android in a couple of webinars. It's just not possible, or iOS for that matter. And so it's just a balance of all these thoughts, and I absolutely think that we can improve our Buzztouch U content and our webinar strategy in terms of the titles and the time schedules, and the consistency of what it is that I'm learning, that will help the developers and our market. But there's my rant, Susan. What do you think?
Well, a couple ideas that are fairly specific. One idea I proposed to David and Warren quite a while ago was that maybe we should just get an Android book, and then we all have to kind of, everyone that wants to be in the Android class has to commit to studying outside of class, doing the tutorials outside of class, and then David would actually come and, and then we maybe meet with David and without David and work through the problems and talk about it. But then David's role would be just to tell us, Buzztouch it for us. That was one idea that I had.
Yeah.
But that has that problem that you said, that what if people want to start in the middle? Though we kind of know who our strong iOS developers are now. It really is trying to get that group into this Android class. The other idea I had, maybe more short-term thinking, but to solve the immediate problem, is to have some training classes where we would take an existing iOS-only plugin on the market, and we already have a control panel, we already have iOS, we just need the Android. Have David use that as a teaching tool for us, and at the same time build the Android for that plugin, and then we have one done with that class.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is we have to find some pretty. I think what the Android people, they don't want the simple little things. They want the more complex, the fancy menus, and that you can't really do in an hour. But it might be that we could do it, break it into some pieces, and then we'd have people kind of watch you and you explain it. I'm not quite sure the best approach. I kind of think the stronger approach for the longer term is to do more of the class where people really take the initiative and commit to studying it, and we'll see that commitment. And
yeah,
I really appreciate that. I think that's probably a better longer term. The shorter term, I'd just love to see something on the market sooner rather than later. I do feel like people that are really big into Android are losing, or I don't see them around as much anymore. I'm kind of concerned about that, and so I feel like there's some immediacy to it as well.
I think there's a couple of different competing ideas that we can't lose sight of, and in fact, before I go off on that tangent, Kristen and Tony are saying, hey, let's have a look at the new self-hosted panel, and you see I brought that up. I want to walk through the install process or the update, which is the same thing, so everybody understands that. But before I do that, I think it's important that we recognize a couple of things. And the first thing is, learning how to program an Android app versus learning how to make plugins for a Buzztouch Android app aren't necessarily the same things. So it's challenging for me, and I think for Susan and everybody else, I think people recognize this. Do we teach people how to do Android apps and then bring them up to speed on how to integrate that learning into a Buzztouch app? Or do we do it the other way around? And it's not an easy question to ask. So that's one thing that's a constant struggle, right? And that's where we can't just jump into, for example, like Susan, you said, maybe taking a existing plugin and converting it. Well, yeah, that would be a cool class, but not for people who have never done anything in Android before, because it would be almost over their head from the beginning. So it's difficult. And Sean, who's also in our meeting, brings up exactly my next point. It's very, very, I love to teach, right? And I love to explain, and I love to try to help people understand this stuff. However, I also love making great software. And I also love making things that are creative and fun and unique. And the more teaching that we do, the less we're making great software as a company, as a firm, as a community. So do we want our community to be one that spends a lot of its time and resources on teaching, which we could get really good at? Or do we want to spend a lot of our time and resources on making awesome software and help the audience learn where they can go outside of Buzztouch to learn? Because make no mistake, there's lots of places that are doing amazing jobs at teaching that we couldn't do. And so Sean's saying, hey, would it be better to partner with someone to teach it? I would love to partner with people to teach this, but I just don't know who those people are. And so Tony, in fact, who's also in our meeting, Tony Kristo, who's on our team, he's been doing a lot of research and a lot of work on who some strategic partners for us will be. And learning and education and teaching partners are absolutely part of that. The good news is I don't feel like we're in a hurry. I feel like we can kind of take our time and do this right. But I don't want to align our company and our brand and our community and you guys with people who are just going to, try to sell you stuff. I'm very sensitive to that. And I think it's disingenuous for many, many of these sites online to just literally reach out and take your money and give you something that doesn't have a whole lot of value. Now, there are also some really valuable sites that have a lot of value. And I can name a few of those, but you know, the high quality learning material is kind of a hot topic right now. It's very disruptive. We've heard of all different kinds of things like Udemy and, you know, Coursera and these different sites that are doing a great job, but definitely something for us to work on. So Susan, if you got a few more comments on the Android learning, that's cool. And then if not, we'll move right into this Buzztouch update.
Well, the other bigger thing is maybe trying to have people form partnerships and work together. Like right now, A-Train is helping Suvini and learn to make Android plugins, but he also can make iOS plugins at the same time. I'd like to see more of these partnerships and try to foster that where we can. Although they kind of have to be a partnership that is between two people that already have an existing relationship and trust each other, because it's kind of a very difficult thing to, you know, share something when there is some money possibly in the loop there.
Right.
I know Keith is working on some things too to try. Mac Apple is working on he's working on some strategies on that front too for us.
Yeah, I think it'll always be a challenge. I think it's both a great thing about our system and also going to be a lot of work is going to be around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's explore.
David, can I ask kind of a basic question?
Yeah.
And forgive me if it's an ignorant question.
No, that's all right.
You've looked at everything that's in the plugin market right now.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any one plugin in there that could not be converted to an Android plugin?
Nope.
Just
They can all be converted.
Somebody that had the knowledge and took the time, it could be done, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And again, where we spend our
the
resources.
carousel would be a lot of work though if we didn't have like some, because the carousel was kind of pre-built to a large degree. That'd be a lot of work to make from scratch.
Yeah, a lot of them would be a lot of work for sure. But they can all absolutely be created, right? In programming, you can do anything. That's the good news. Now, how long that takes, you know, who knows? One of the challenges that we face, and the plugin's a difficult thing, because of the openness of the setup that we put together. One of the things that we're trying to prevent is having two plugins. Like, we want the same plugin to work for both, but we also want it to be the same developer who's behind it. That may not turn out to be realistic. It may be that we've got, you know, a couple of developers involved in the same plugin, because I wouldn't want a carousel for iOS and a carousel for Android. They should be the same thing. And so that's where the kind of the pickle we get in, you know, comes in. I mean, at some point we should probably do more work to help these developers who have made iOS only get them to Android. And you know, frankly, that's what I did for months at the end of last year. That's all I did, was try to help people get them supporting, you know, different platforms. And it just got to the point where we couldn't keep up. And of course, without whining, you know, we didn't set up the market. We didn't structure the market to where it would create us a lot of resources. It isn't as if we're, you know, earning a bunch of money on this thing. We're trying to power the developers to make a little bit of money, but there's not a whole lot left for us to actually invest in that. And so it may be, you know, who knows, but it may be that the open source plugin market approach isn't best for our audience. It might be that we're better off, you know, investing in that market on our own and not embracing developers that, you know, require a lot of attention and a lot of time and a lot of resources, and just doing it ourselves and hiring employees to do that. I don't want to say that. I'd love to think that the model we came up with is great and it'll last forever, but we don't know that yet. We just don't know that. So we'll just do the best we can and continue to try to grow it. And Susan, you're doing an amazing job in just the organization, which is awesome. So anyway, let's go to...
But really, if you look at what the plugin market has done so far and how its short little life, and how it's matured, and how our own developers have learned how to code and learned how to make different things they found for code and tutorials into Buzztouch plugins, we're just starting.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And so I think it will always be something we talk about and always come up with a new mousetrap, and that's not necessarily good, which goes back to my previous thing. We just got to give it some time and keep fighting and innovating and learning and improving on how we can teach. And I agree. Okay, so let's talk about this self-hosted thing so we don't run out of too much time. Most people don't realize that the installation process and the update process are in essence the same thing. So let's talk about this in terms of a new install, and then we'll restart and we'll do an existing install. I can tell you that this installation right here already works. It's right here. This is that installation. And so I've not deleted the installation folder. You can see I'm in the installation folder right now. So I'm just going to go through the steps, and I'll show you that it's not going to hurt anything because this application or this install already exists. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that my application physical path is correct. That's going to try to autofill for you. And by the way, I'm on the install index.php page. And if you look in the install folder, I've uploaded everything to the server. If you look in the install folder, we're in this directory right here, install. We're on index.php. So this folder doesn't do a whole, or this file doesn't do a whole lot other than collect some basic settings. So it's asking me for the URL to my application. So I'm just going to cheat and copy that out of the address bar. So I'm not in the install folder. I'm just buzztouch.com, BT server. BT server is my little demo account. It's going to ask me for my database credentials. So I have, this is kind of funny, you guys are going to sneak into my testing stuff. I have a testing database set up literally with the name your DB name, so I can test this stuff. Your DB username and your DB, can't remember what the password is, and I'm going to say next. It says I'm invalid. Let me make sure I've got the right password, because this is not generic. And all I'm doing is telling the system to connect to an existing database, because this database already exists. And you see I get the green box here? If you want to nerd out a little bit, let me show you what just happened. We are still on the index page, but because we hit submit, you'll see right here, if the form's posted, we made sure that we had all the entries in the box. If I go back, you'll see all these entries are in the box. We made sure the form was posted. And then what we did is we executed this method called function does database server exist. And all we tried to do there was verify that the database existed. And you'll see here that we're using an include file called db.php. So that's doing all the work in terms of our database. On a new install, it's got to create all of the tables. On an existing install, it has to make some changes to those tables. So does the database exist? Yes. If we find the database, where was I? Right here. If we find the database, then we're going to run this function create tables method. And it's going to create all the tables in our database. That one, that one, that one. So it only creates these if they don't exist. So if not exists. So on this install, let's go to admin and look at the database. You'll see here that these database tables already exist. So we certainly wouldn't want to overwrite them for people who are upgrading an existing system. But we want to install them all. Now, because there were some changes to the database this time around on 2.1.8, we need to make sure that, let me go down here, we need to make sure that some of these properties, some of these fields are added to the existing table. So we're going to alter the applications table, and we're going to add some columns. So we did that to make sure those columns exist. And then when we get all done updating the database, we're going to return. And that's where we are here. So if you have an existing install, all you got to do is enter the same database you're already using, the same password and the same table prefix. Say next, and it'll update your database for you. It verifies that the root URL, the application URL that we installed is right. It shows us the checkbox. We say next. There's a bunch of files that are required, directories inside the files folder to make the software work. If they already exist, it's not going to overwrite them. That's the files folder. Your files folder has a temporary subdirectory, applications subdirectory, plugins, theme, custom. We wouldn't want to override any of that stuff. And then we say next. And this is the biggest change this time around. The previous version of the self-hosted package, your configuration data was stored in the database. This time around, it's stored in the configuration file. And so the configuration file in the root of your project, right here, has all these PHP constants. And all these PHP constants are used to power the application. And so when you entered the values in those previous screens, it's trying to create these constants for you. So what you'll want to do is copy this information here and paste it into that config file, and then upload it and you're done. So that's really how you update it and install it. It's the same process. It's exactly the same process. So hopefully that makes sense. Do we want to ask questions about this?
I don't see any hands up.
I've got a question. I always
Go ahead,
do.
Susan.
So one thing that you said, maybe I know came here a little late, but you know, with the new self-hosted server, we don't have to update the plugins anymore. It just automatically updates. I'm really looking forward to that.
Good question. Check this out. So if I go in as an administrator, say admin, I have manage plugins on the left, just like before. And this is dramatically different now. So this page looks about the same. It's just a list of the plugins that are installed on the machine. So the first thing I can do is I can check for updates right here, right? So if one of these needs updated, I can also install it from right here. I think I already checked them all. I refrain from doing this all automatically on this version because I'm intentionally, wanting to kind of baby step my way into this. But this is a big improvement from before, and this is not the only improvement. Let me find one that needs updated. I think we're all good. But we don't have to go back and forth and open up a bunch of windows and all that. We can just do it right from this list. Am I skipping some? Maybe I don't have one. Maybe I updated them all. But let me show you the cool thing. The coolest thing, I should say. Now, these are all updated. But you don't have an add plugin button anymore. You've got an plugin maintenance screen. So if we go to this plugin maintenance screen, we can do a couple of different things. We can upload a package just like we did before. And this is the coolest. So nothing changed there. But this is the cool thing. Let's say that you logged in, and if you're a brand new user and you've never done this before, or you're an existing user and you just want to quit dealing with all the complexities around the plugins. If I download the plugins from my Buzztouch control panel, let's see if I have my password in here. Not sure if I do. Oh, I don't have my password in here. Let me stop sharing my screen for a second, enter my password, and then I'll come back to this. Give me 1 sec here, screen sharing. Can somebody verify that I've stopped screen sharing?
Are you moving your mouse right now?
Yeah.
It's not moving on my screen.
So tell me if you can see something change here. Can you see something change?
Nope.
Okay, so I'm safe then. Let me update my password real quick in my configuration data. And that will help us demonstrate this. Go get my account information. Okay, so I'm going to go to my self-hosted servers. I'll get an API key. And the password. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. You guys see my screen again?
Yes.
Okay, so I've entered my API key and my Buzztouch account information, and now what I can do is download plugins from my Buzztouch.com control panel. So what this is going to do is it's going to connect to my control panel using my email address that I entered in my configuration file, and it's going to show me all the plugins that I've purchased and installed in my Buzztouch.com account, and it's going to show me the ones that are not installed. So the timer is not installed, photo effects is not installed. So if I want to install this email image plugin, all I got to do is click the install button. Watch what happens when I install this. It's going to download it and install it. There's the plugin, and that's how big it is. So now when I go back to my plugin list, that was email image. Right here. So if I look at the email image plugin, you'll see that I installed it just a second ago with one click. So that's kind of cool. That's a huge improvement. If you guys have been downloading and juggling all these plugin packages, you know you'll recognize right away how cool that is. So that's good. What else do we have to show you? We have a lot of the changes in the self-hosted panel you're already familiar with. The push notification process is just like on Buzztouch.com. The published changes and the live data is just like on Buzztouch.com. The JSON data and the live versus design mode, right? This is all just like you would expect on Buzztouch. And then we have the usage map, which we didn't have before. So that's kind of cool. This will show you a bunch of map stuff, and then we can download the usage data. This is a big deal here. You can actually download as many files as you want. Like, let's say we wanted to download the last 500 usage records or API records to deal with it in a spreadsheet or something like that. You can see we have a download here that'll show us the name of the method call, report to cloud, the name of the device, its latitude and longitude if available. You can do all kinds of interesting things with this. So this is 500 rows at a time because I entered 500 for number of rows, but I could certainly do 2,000 if I wanted. There's only 1,700 rows in this table, so I could submit that. I could ignore rows that don't have information about the location. Does that make sense? So that's kind of cool. Sean's saying, that's awesome. How would it look if we did a custom plugin? How would it look? I guess that would depend on what plugin you uploaded. I don't. That's a good question, but I don't know. If that doesn't make any sense, I'm not sure how else to say that. But yeah, a custom plugin, it's going to look like your plugin and your icon, I guess. The theme changed a little bit. This is kind of cool. The theme, it used to take you to themes. Instead of themes, it now takes you to theme. And what we found out was the vast majority of people are only running one theme. And if you remember, it used to take you to themes, and it would take you to a list like this, where you'd have multiple themes, and then you'd have to set one active and all that. Now, theme just takes you to the active theme. Much faster to do it that way. So that's kind of cool. What else did we change? Oh, I went to the wrong screen. Yeah, and those are the biggest changes I can think of. There's lots and lots of little bug fixes added, that's for sure. We actually streamlined a lot of the code you know, having to do this thing gets, old code is good code, right? And we just always, it's amazing how long something can run before we find, you know, a bug. Somebody will point it out. But so that's kind of cool. The database now has been altered a little bit. Let's go back to that and I'll show you what I mean. The database has been altered a little bit to make it a little bit more appropriate. APN devices and APN queue, this is about the push notification stuff. Those are new tables. And then the applications list has some interesting things for the push certification passwords and the Google project ID. You'll notice some changes in there, which are kind of cool. But yeah, so we're excited about this. This is kind of endless, trying to balance, you know, the features versus the functionality. Anyway, Kristen, is there any way we can have a simple portal to give customers to do their own push notifications without giving them access to the control panel and thereby allowing them to break their app? That's a wonderful question. In fact, that came up on the forum, or maybe you asked me in an email. I'm not real sure. Simple's relative in this case, right? And so for somebody like me, yeah, there is a simple way to do that. But let me talk about the complexities around what Kristen's asking. So Kristen's saying, hey, if I'm not Joe developer, I'm the administrator of this site, of my portal, and I built an app for Joe developer, and I don't want him to do anything other than just manage the push notifications. And maybe I'm going to charge him money to do that or whatever. That makes perfect sense as a developer. So right now, if you look at the URL and you look at the owner of this application, it's Joe, right? So as an administrator, if I wanted to prevent all of this stuff from happening, I'd have to come up with something. In other words, I don't want Joe to change anything like this. All I want him to do is push notifications. And so I can think of a couple of different ways to do that. None of them are trivial, but none of them are horribly complex. So this first thing that I would do, and Kristen, maybe you can revisit this webinar, because I am talking fast, but this would be the strategy that I would take. The first thing that I would do is I would create a new user, control panel users. There's only one in here, Joe developer. I'd create a new user, and we'll call this Johnny Pizza Guy, whatever. And we'll say he's at Johnny, I don't know, he's at john@yahoo.com. So this is the login you would give him. So john@yahoo.com on this control panel, and we'll give him a password, and we'll make him a normal user. So john@yahoo.com and the password I submitted. That would be step one, is we'd add a user. Step two is I would go to the application list as an administrator, and I would make him the owner of one of these apps. So you have an owner. So Joe developer, the person who's logged in, is the owner now. I'm going to select this app with the checkbox, and I'm going to change the application owner. So the owner that I'm going to use is the pizza guy that we made. So this is my customer, and I want to, quote, give him this app that I made for him. So we'll submit that. So now the pizza guy is the customer. So let's verify that we can log out and log back in as him. He's john@yahoo.com. And we're going to log up in, or we're going to log in as John. And you'll notice that Johnny doesn't have an admin link here. He's not an administrator. And so that's the first thing that we're happy about, because we set him as a normal user. And we gave him this app. So we're not interested in his account situation here on the left, although based on this discussion, I would probably want to do something about hiding the creating new application link. I may not want John creating new applications necessarily, but you can figure that out. This test in account, I'll get back to what that is here in just a sec. So we probably would want to hide the create new application. And then also, when he logs in, we probably don't want to give him we've already decided. We don't want to give him anything other than push notifications. So I think what I would probably do is just copy this push notifications file, call it something else, like push notifications, I don't know, private maybe? or push notifications, or maybe give it a strategic name, I'm not sure. I would copy this, and that file is push notifications is in this folder right here. I'll copy this, and let's call it, I'm just going to paste. Let's call it push. How about push clients or something like that? Let's say push clients. I'm going to open this push client page up, and I'm going to make sure that this person's logged in. Yeah, I want to do that. I'm not going to change any of this stuff. What I'm interested in doing is changing all this stuff up here. I don't want these links up here, right? Because I don't want them to get back to this stuff. I might not even want application home. But let's just assume we want to just hide all of this stuff. So if we did this, to hide those links, I don't want to change anything else about this application. I'm going to come down here to the HTML, and I'm going to remove these links right here. And those links are, right, you see where it says function get control panel links? We'll take those out. If I just removed all of this, see what happens here. Push client.php. This is a brand new file. It's not called push notifications, it's called push client. It does the exact same thing, but there are no links up here. So that would be one simple way to limit what he can do. But we haven't accomplished the other couple things either. Like we haven't accomplished how do we link from this to, instead of going to the index page for this app, index.php is where we are. Instead of going here, what we want to do is link that. We want to change the source code a little bit in our account screen to link to that push client screen. That's how I would do it. So hopefully that makes a little sense. I know there's a ton of ways to do this, but that's just one strategy. So you would alter, you'd make a new file that matches the other one. You would remove the links, and then you would modify this link here to take him to that new push screen. If we go back, let me log out and log back in. I want to show you why do we have this test account link right here? And interestingly, watch what this does. This is going to open up Google in a new window. Why is that? A lot of people don't realize you can do this. Let me log out and log back in as me, my little test guy. My little cool password. Okay, so we're logging back in as an administrator, and I want to show you why, when we're looking at an app, why do we have, I'm sorry, not an app. When we're looking at an account, why do we have this test account link? So if you go to admin and then control panel links, this is an often overlooked feature that I think is kind of cool. There are three core areas where you have links on the left. Right now we're in the options, the admin options. So those are all of these links. I'm sorry, these links. When we're on an application, we're on these links. And when we're in our account, we're in these links. So you can see here that I added a new link. Let's say that this goes to my company website, and instead of opening in a new window, it opens in the same window. In essence, what we're doing is saying, hey, when a customer's logged in, we're adding a link down here to probably take us back to the main portal of our website or whatever. And so you can manipulate the links in these three control panels. You have the admin panel, the account panel, the application panel, and then you have the admin panel, which is right here. So you can control these control panel links dynamically and change their order here as an administrator, and that can become really, really powerful as you try to customize the software to be used for other folks. Niraj is asking a question he asked before. Can we create a mobile app to do push notifications for a client's app? Totally. Do anything you want. What you would have to figure out, I say that, rather relatively loosely, but along the same idea, you'd have to think of some strategy to figure out how do you want to interact? How do you want to make a request to your back end to add a push notification to your queue? So let's say that you have an app that you want to build. Let's go to an application. Let's go to push notifications. As you know, all you need to do to send, you need to do two things to send a push notification. You need to add a record to the push notification queue, and then you need to hit the send button. So you know what the push notification queue table looks like. Just go to the database. This is what the queue looks like. So your application would send these values to your back end and add a push record. How you did that, I mean, I can think of a lot of ways. You'd probably want to give a customer, you'd probably want to build an app to let the customer log into your control panel. Probably want to build an app to let the customer create a new push record. Maybe you let them send it right then. Maybe they send it later. You might start by just making a mobile HTML5 web page that looks like the same push queue page that we've already given you. You know, something like this, but mobilized. I can see how that can get super complicated, but also I can see how it could be pretty simple too. You might just experiment by copying this page like we did before and trying to maybe remove some of the stuff so it fits nicely on a mobile gadget until you get a design worked out. It's a good question. I'm not so sure I would want clients running push notifications through my back end personally, but that's up to you guys. And that's kind of the next can of worms that we're going to be facing. And we haven't really discussed it much, but depending on how many devices you're trying to send push messages through, I can imagine a lot of lower cost hosts not performing very well when you're talking about millions of devices or even hundreds of thousands of devices. And I think that might be another webinar altogether, is push notifications and volume and some of the strategies of how we can do that. But definitely this panel is very dependent upon, you know, the machine it's running on and how powerful it is and what kind of bandwidth it can consume and all those kinds of things. And I'm not trying to scare everybody, but it will be interesting to see what happens when people running their own web servers and their own self-hosted panels begin to try to send messages to hundreds of thousands of devices. I have some ideas to try to help folks through that problem, but it's certainly not a problem now, but I imagine it will be in a few weeks. We'll help them through at that point. But anyway, anybody else want to chat it up? Any other questions?
I forwarded you a question there from David Barber. I don't know if you saw it. It was above Niraj's.
Above Niraj's. Oh, back to push. If I delete the devices from my push screen, when the device launches the app again, will it ask for push permission again, or will it just register again, or neither? That's a good question, David. What it should do is if it's prompting the user to push on Google, it will re-register with your control panel pretty much every single time. On Apple, it's nowhere near that simple. In fact, you should probably do this as a little bit of homework. Google re-prompt user for push notifications on iOS, and you'll see 1,000 discussions about why it doesn't necessarily do that. If you look in the settings panel on your app, in your phone, when a user says yes or no to push notifications, that choice will become available in the settings panel on the iOS device. And when they delete the app, that will be gone. But when they reinstall the app, it almost never asks them again to allow push notifications. And I know that sounds crazy, but really what we're talking about is Apple keeps a pretty good tabs on these Apple IDs. And if your Apple ID, or if your app ID, your app ID has already prompted the user to allow or disallow push, there is no built-in way to force that prompt again. And so, to summarize what I'm saying, even if they delete your app, if they've registered and then changed their mind, it's not necessarily going to prompt them. And if you delete their registered device from your control panel, it should re-register on your control panel, but it won't re-prompt them. Hope that makes sense. Basically, every time the device token is found on iOS and Android, it sends it to your backend, and it'll just overwrite it it won't overwrite it if it already exists, but if it doesn't exist, it'll just re-add it to your list. And I'll show you where it does that. In your delegate file, in this did register for remote notifications, that fires all the time. Apple triggers this thing a lot, and when they do, they're giving you a token. So when that token shows up, which happens a lot, it'll register it on your back end right here. And then on your back end, if the token already exists, it won't overwrite it. If it doesn't exist, it'll add it. So if it's a new one, it'll add it. What I'm saying is it's not easy to re-prompt the user. It's difficult to get the app to do that, and that's why I said go Google it, because you'll see a bunch of laughing and fighting and crying discussions about I can't do it, and there's tricks about, you know, setting the date on your phone to a date in the future, and then deleting the app, and then setting the date to the past to try to trick iOS. There's all these different topics. It's crazy, but it's not easy. And then Caleb's saying,
hey, David, before you jump off of that, I don't know if you remember this from when you and I talked about this back in May of last year about push notification. Is the production device token the same as the development device token?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Two completely different systems. So another way to say that is you could see the same device in your control panel. There's no way for you to know that it's the same device. It looks like two different devices, but you know it's the same device if you're the only one who's got your app. When you go to show devices, you'll see two records when you know the only phone it's on is yours. And that has to do with the way you compile it. When you compile it with your provisioning profile, that is a development profile, a token will be issued to it. And when you compile it with a release provisioning profile, it'll give you a new token.
Okay. Because I think it does. I think you and I had that conversation a while back, and it wasn't clear whether it was the same or different.
Yeah, totally. Caleb, I came in late, so I already have answered this, but how do we change the background image color for the BT panel? It's a great question. It's not too late. What you're going to do is in your Buzztouch server panel, you're going to have a folder called Files. You're not going to see it on the download. This is made dynamically on your website, so you might have to go to your remote view and download it from your website. And then you have a theme folder, and inside the theme folder you have one style sheet, a fav icon, and a logo. The style sheet is the style sheet. The fav icon is up here in the browser bar, and the logo is the logo on the left. To recreate that, what I would do is copy my theme directory, my files folder. I'll call this theme blue. Okay. Copy my theme directory. Now I got a new one that's exact match of the other one. I'm going to open up my theme blue directory, and I'm going to find the style sheet, and I'm going to change the colors. I'm just going to change it however I want. Texture, the texture image, I might want to change that to a different background image. So I would just copy the whole theme, paste the new version, give it a new name, and then in your configuration data, your config file, you're going to change the path to the theme. And what I mean by that is, see if I can find this. The theme in your config folder is right here. So I would change that to theme blue, just like that. There you go. Pretty simple. Good question. Niraj, if we stick with buzztouch.com infrastructure, if we want to stick with it, I'm hoping you will we be able to upload our custom plugins just for us? Yes, and maybe I'm confused. Oh, maybe you don't quite understand that. So Niraj, let me show you how you can already do that. You go to your Buzztouch control panel. You go to, am I not logged in? You go to applications, I'm sorry, plugins. If you use this create custom plugin button, you can create the plugin, download the inlet, create an empty package for you, do whatever you want to it, and then submit it. And as long as it doesn't contain anything malicious and you don't want to put it in the market, we'll say sure. We call that approved private. So yeah, you can already do that. Good question. Great question, as a matter of fact. Let's see anything else. Looks like we got about 5 minutes.
Yep, that's about right. We got about 5 minutes.
We did get some folks to show up, which is cool.
Yeah, we've had up to 16 attend. Some people have come in and dropped off.
Yeah.
So it's always great to have all this attendance. David, I've got a question for you, and maybe not appropriate for this Q&A session, but I'll ask it anyway. You and I do these webinars kind of based on what you've told me your availability is and what my availability is, because I've got another job besides Buzztouch. I guess the question is, do you think you and I are missing some of our audience by doing it Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday night? And with that, what I'm asking and volunteering to do is to do somewhat during what we would consider off hours, maybe an evening or early morning, to try to pick up people in Europe or Asia.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I personally think we're missing some people, but I don't know. I don't know. I've not had any feedback really from people to tell me, I would attend if it was at a different time.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the best strategy with that is. I mean, maybe we need to just figure out, maybe we need to, there's two camps on this, right? One is this random times, so that you hit a lot of people who may be able to make it on one of the random times that you're promoting. And then the other camp says always do it very consistently every week so that they just know. And if it's important to them, even if they can't attend, they'll know when it is and they'll be able to watch the recordings. I'm not sure the best approach. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I'm not either. I'm getting a little bit of feedback here on the window that says, for example, Smug Wimp says 2 p.m. meetings are hard for him because that turns out to be 5 a.m., which I understand. But these 9 p.m. meetings, 9 p.m. Eastern, turns out to be 1 p.m. for him, and that's ideal. John Wilson says the times are good for him. And David Barber says just to request questions from people that can't attend, which we do anytime that there is a posting for a webinar. They can always send me a question or send you a question, and we'll try to work it in.
Hey, and along those lines, since we have 2 more minutes left,
go ahead.
Let's get the audience's measure. I mean, you can get their chat about what you and I were talking about yesterday in terms of that little video answer series.
Oh, yeah.
It might be a better use of we spend a lot of time, you and I, on these webinars. And so does Susan, and so does Ian, and so does Chris. And, a lot of us spend a ton of time just trying to kind of help and communicate, which we're completely willing to do. But I think it might be fun to experiment with not doing them live because it's around everybody's schedule, but just having a submission process. And then every day, literally every day, doing like a 5-minute, question of the day or questions of the day with a video and a demonstration, and have a big library of those. I want to get the feedback on that.
Well, my thinking about that, David, and I'm more than happy to, fire those questions at you or welcome people to just send them directly to you. And then like you and I said yesterday, maybe you create a mobile app that has the latest, 5 minutes from David or whoever's going to answer the question.
Yeah, we have to figure out one thing that I've finally learned is, process helps everybody. And for example, I didn't look at my email yesterday because I was so stressed out trying to get this new release of this panel out. I had 400 emails that are unread. 400. And so
that's crazy.
It's not, yeah, so if those are just questions, I mean, I feel bad, that I can't reply to everybody. Now, everybody's like super sweet about, when you get time, don't worry about it. But the fact is it's just ridiculous. And so I have to come up with a better way. And I think that our site needs to come up with a better way of trying to help people list those things down so that we can just fire out all the answers. But yeah, that's.
Yeah, I'm getting some feedback here, and I'll just kind of read through them. Let's see, where do I start? Because they just started firing them fast and furious as soon as we started talking about. So John Wilson, of course, said that the time was good for him. Request questions from those who can't attend, which we do. They can watch the recordings to get those answers. And that's a sidebar. I'm having some trouble getting recordings uploaded to YouTube. For some reason, they're like significantly out of sync. Like the video and the audio are minutes out of sync, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. So I'm still trying to square that away. Kristen points out, as long as we don't have the same meeting at the same type of meeting at the same time every time, that would be beneficial. Niraj, of course, chimes in and says to encourage people who cannot attend to send in their questions ahead of time, and they can watch the playback, which of course we do that.
I think I'm going to interrupt you right there. I think it would be cool to just create a new forum a new forum category called like no discussions or something, or just questions of the day.
Yeah. Actually, that was the very next one I was going to read you.
Yeah.
is where he says, just post the Q&A in a special section of the forum. And like you say, don't expand on it. And it's simple. The forum post is the question and the body is the answer, and that's it.
Well, and I would say the video is the answer.
Right. I agree with that.
Because it just takes so long to type out some of these answers that seem easy. Or maybe both. Maybe we do, have to get through that. I mean, it's a matter of cataloging. I mean, we have thousands of questions now that are repeats, but we also have thousands of questions that aren't repeats. And trying to organize that is really complicated.
Well, you mean you don't have time to do that, David?
No, and it's not that we don't have time. It's just that search is certainly an improvement, but it's not an easy answer. And there's startups and companies focusing on, trying to solve this problem. But all of these questions, I don't know the best way to do it. I mean, I've tried to study like a lot of these services like discuss.com and a lot of these services like getsatisfaction.com. Some of these things, and I wouldn't be adverse to paying those people, but I'm not convinced that they're any better. So I just. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to organize that stuff, but I think a question and answers with just a long list, endless scrolling, none of this paging stuff, just a long list with the question and then the video link, and I think that would be cool.
Well, I agree. Sometimes you don't even know where to start to go look for a problem or for a solution. And, a quality question post may be exactly what you need to figure it out. Let's see. I think John Wilson, he posted this twice to me, where we still continue to have these Q&A webinars, but do them less frequently, like once a month, and then get more involved in these short 3 to 5 minute videos that we can post, which I'm fine with that. Now, I will say, just to respond to John, I did make a decision at the beginning of the year to make sure that 1 out of every 4 of these webinars that we do is specifically Q&A.
Yeah.
Because people I really think do get a lot out of these. And, they're kind of disjointed sometimes and they kind of wander around, but it's a great forum not only to ask your question, but to listen to other questions that are coming up. So I personally like them. I don't know that I'd want to cut back from them, but I think supplementing them with the short, bite-sized segments would be ideal.
Yeah, I agree. So let's wrap this up.
All right. Well, I think that we've gotten quite a bit out of this tonight, David, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everybody who's asked questions and responded here over the past 90 minutes. As soon as I can get this posted, I will. Again, I'm still trying to work through a problem with YouTube, but as soon as I can get them up. As a side note, if somebody wanted to get all of these, I have all of the original videos still archived at my location. If somebody wanted them on a flash drive, I would be more than happy to record all those videos on a flash drive and send it to them. Just get in touch with me and we can work out the logistics. But basically, you send me a flash drive, I copy all the videos over, I send it back to you, and that would be that. So
cool. We should start. You and I should start figuring out a way to get those on the Buzztouch channel too. So we'll work on it.
I'd be happy to do that. Next week, cool. We don't have anything scheduled for Tuesday, which is probably good. I need a little bit of a break to get caught up on some other stuff. Wednesday night is our next new user webinar. And just keep an eye on the forum for our new webinars coming up the following week.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a great evening.
Bye.
Bye.